nothing gets past the feds, does it? We got work to do.
I don't really trust anyone.
Those are the only people worth trusting.
CIA. New series CBS Monday after a new FBI.
Go to the ends of the earth, half a world away. Reach for the stars.
If I take time to think, they might go get Brad.
Experience thought-provoking,
mystical in every sense of the word,
and truly original reporting.
That's your superpower.
There's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow. Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
This is CBS News America Decides Campaign 2026 Summertime Edition. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Good evening, everyone. There are 5 primary elections today: Michigan, Kansas, Missouri, Washington, and Virginia. You see them on the map right there. But there's one big reason we're here and with you tonight. I'm sure you've heard about it. The Senate Democratic primary in Michigan. Now, it's a must-win for Democrats if they're going to have any shot at gaining control of the Senate in the November midterms. Why? Well, because Michigan is a Democratic seat held by Gary Peters, but he's not seeking re-election. This race has become a bit of a Rorschach test on the very future of the Democratic Party. It pits a progressive, Abdul El-Sayed, against a kind of more establishment, comparatively more moderate House Representative Haley Stevens. The winner will face Republican Mike Rogers, who this evening is running unopposed. Now, polls just closed in Michigan. They closed in certain parts of the states at 8 p.m. Eastern. We're already seeing some of the vote total. You can see right now what can only be described as a commanding lead for Abdul El-Sayed, who is a former public health official in the Detroit area. That vote total keeps shifting. You see Haley Stevens picking up a little bit there. Senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe is with the Abdul El-Sayed campaign in Detroit and leads us off tonight. Ed.
Major, good evening from the Majestic Theater in downtown Detroit. The political director of the United Auto Workers Union has just taken the stage to kick off the evening's festivities now that the polls have closed. Part of the support he has received is from organized labor. And the question Michigan Democrats are being asked to answer tonight is, are they okay with, do they want a 41-year-old whose full name is Abdul Rahman Mohammed El-Sayed, an epidemiologist and Rhodes Scholar, who ran unsuccessfully for governor 6 years ago and in so doing alienated most of the Democratic Party establishment in this state, to be nominated to hold a seat that this century has been held by Carl Levin and Gary Peters. And perhaps more critically, are they willing to put someone who calls himself a capitalist, despite the fact that he campaigns with socialists like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar and other progressives who've won key primaries in New York and Denver earlier this year, in this position, potentially, should he win the Senate seat, and set him up to be a presidential kingmaker in 2028 when Michigan becomes one of the early primary states for Democrats as they pick their next presidential nominee, putting this battleground state earliest it's ever been in the primary process because it successfully argued that big battleground states should help pick nominees earlier in the process. That's the question they're being asked to answer, and so far tonight the results suggest the answer is yes, they're okay with that. He's doing well in places like Grand Rapids and Ann Arbor. where Bernie Sanders has done well in the past. We'll talk about that tonight. But we will be up late because Detroit counts slowly. And Detroit is where Congresswoman Stevens believes is her base of support, thanks mostly to its black voters. She has successfully, she argues, prosecuted the case that given her work during the Obama years on the auto rescue, she should be sent to Washington with a promotion to serve in the Senate. El-Sayed turns around and says the tens of millions of dollars spent against me has set me up for this, has put me in this position, and it's part of the reason why he campaigns on a three-pronged pledge. Money out of politics, money in your pocket, Medicare for all. Repeats it relentlessly day after day. It's on his campaign literature. He says it in interviews and in speeches. And it looks like that's what Democrats, at least given these initial results, are hoping to send to the Senate. Major?
And there's not a sizable crowd behind you, but at least it is noticeable. I'm going to turn now to Aaron Navarro, who is with the Haley Stevens campaign. And I don't want to let our audience get the misimpression that there is nobody there tonight for Haley Stevens. As I understand it, Aaron, you're in a separate hold room, and there are people there. So it's not a barren, non-attended victory party for Haley Stevens. It's an election night. They're just slightly off camera. Do I have that right?
That is correct, Major. We are separated by a really thin barrier, so you can still hear and see glimpses of the supporters in the room next to us, where they seem to be cheering as election results have been coming in. As Ed mentioned, the Detroit area, the suburbs in the Detroit metro area are going to be key for Stevens to win or at least keep this primary close, and they seem to be cheering on for that. And, you know, just to pick up on what Ed said about El-Sayed's closing message, the closing message we heard from Stevens is essentially being very dismissive of the slogans, of the promises that he has made throughout his campaign, as she has argued that she has the experience as a congresswoman representing a competitive district north of Detroit since 2018 and has survived multiple Republican waves, thinking of 2024 in particular, and also that she would be an effective member of the Senate given that experience. All that being said, her events tend to be smaller, more low-key than El-Sayed's, and that could be emblematic of how we see this race turn out tonight.
And Aaron, as I understand it, according to statewide polls, the expectation is about 30% of tonight's Democratic primary turnout could be African-American voters, and that is a constituency the Stevens campaign really believes can be helpful as the night wears on.
I saw at least the argument that the campaign is making with my eyes when I was in Detroit last week. Stevens attended what is called the Senior Summer Sizzler. It is a gathering of middle to older age black voters in Detroit. And from just seeing her interact with them and talking to them throughout the day, they really cited a familiarity with Haley Stevens. She has represented more affluent counties north of Detroit, but they have said that she has made sure to stop by local black-owned businesses and stay in touch throughout the years. And they have said that El-Sayed is just not as known of a name. They don't really know much about him. And I asked also about one of the main digs that El-Sayed has had towards Stevens, which is the tens of millions of dollars in outside spending, particularly from the pro-Israel AIPAC. I asked many middle to older age black voters, does that outside spending matter to you? It's a big message of Haley Stevens' opponent. And they essentially said no. They said any group can spend on ads, but it's the voters who make up the decisions themselves. That being said, a lot of the AIPAC ads and other ads from outside groups tend to highlight Stevens and her ties to the Obama Auto Task Force during 2009 and during the auto crisis. So they're definitely targeting a certain demographic of voters in the ads that are being shown to those in Detroit.
And this is why we send intrepid reporters like Aaron Navarro out in the field so you, ladies and gentlemen, can learn about events such as the Senior Summer Sizzler and what effect it may or may not have on tonight's results. Speaking of those results, let's dive into the data with CBS News Elections and Surveys Director, your friend in mind, Anthony Salvanto. Anthony, what are you seeing?
Hey there. So right off the top, Major, we characterize this now as leaning towards El-Sayed. Now, he's got more votes. So I know you're going to say, okay, Ant, there's your firm grasp of the obvious again, right? But here, let me unpack this for you. Because the first part of this is some of this vote was cast in advance. It was cast by mail. And when you look at the voters who did that, a very large number of them were older, 65 plus. Why is that important? Because that's your kind of core Democratic constituency. And the El-Sayed campaign was going to say, no, they think they can turn out younger voters. Well, watch this. If I break this down where we are right now, the early vote is actually a little bit better for El-Sayed. That will probably disappoint the Stevens campaign. Now, if I then show you what I'm seeing now on day of, that is in fact showing up so far, which is that on the day of, there's a lot of voters. We suspect there are a lot of younger voters actually turning out. This goes to another larger argument, Major, which is when the Democrats talk about what kind of candidate they think can win in November, the argument from the progressives is they're going to have to speak to and target a lot more of those younger voters, because this is your Senate map, Michigan, a true toss-up on it. And I will add this just for a little bit of context. If I take you back to 2024, you look at how much worse Kamala Harris did with younger voters compared to 2020. That's why it's such an important constituency, and that's why this dynamic right now is where it is, Major.
Anthony, before I let you go, in the next half hour to 45 minutes, where are you going to be looking out on that map of Michigan to give us a trajectory?
Well, you're going to see a lot of people talk about Wayne County. That is Detroit. Now, right here, Haley Stevens is up marginally in just a very little vote that we have seen. I talked about that core Democratic constituency, older voters, often black voters, are going to be important there. Is that margin enough? Quite frankly, in the models, no, it is not. So that's one of the key things we're going to watch. Stick with us another 10, 15 minutes. Let's see if we get more in, man.
That is why we have Aline El-Sayed at this moment. Congressional correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns joins me here at the table. Caitlin, great to see you. Early thoughts as we see the numbers roll in.
Well, we've been talking about this Michigan race as kind of a test for the future of the Democratic Party. But I also, and of course, you know, we've seen this play out on the coast. This will be the first test in a battleground state, a state that President Trump won last time around. But I think it's also going to be a test of the voter sentiment within the Democratic Party and why. And I've been on the campaign trail a lot this cycle already. And time again, in all of these areas is a common theme. They are pissed off. They're pissed off at the president, Donald Trump. They're also pissed off at their own party. They are sick of the establishment as it is.
They blame the consultantocracy. They blame the establishment here in D.C. for what happened in 2024, and they want a kind of comeuppance, it seems.
Yes, and it's also according to voters I've been talking to, Democrats in Congress aren't doing enough to hold the president accountable, but also to do stuff for them.
For the voters' point of view.
Voters themselves. The idea of, you know, affordability, things are expensive, and you're hearing that from El-Sayed, you're hearing this from other candidates who have been running in this more progressive lane. Why are people getting richer while we're struggling? That is kind of an overarching theme that we've been hearing among voters. And also this idea of who can win. And you have a lot of establishment figures saying, in this case, Haley Stevens can win in November. There's a lot of voters that just don't believe that, because they were also saying, well, you know, Kamala Harris can win, President Biden can win. And they were let down time and time again. So they are testing who they think is electable in some of these cases. That remains to be seen. We don't know. A lot of data points to, if El-Sayed wins this primary, that it will be a tough road in November. But Democrats, at least in the base, are arguing, okay, well, what have you done that's worked so far? It hasn't. Why not test it here? So I think it really speaks to this anti-establishment fervor in the base, but it's a little more nuanced than that. And it's going to be concentrated and tested in a place like Michigan.
So Abdul El-Sayed is not a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. He describes himself as a proud progressive, but he also said, look, I ran in 2018. I did not succeed. So I got my clock cleaned by Gretchen Whitmer, who became governor of Michigan, re-elected governor, who has endorsed Haley Stevens, by the way. But what I said in 2018, I am saying now. I'm not authentic, he told us at O'Keefe yesterday, as much as I am consistent. So people can rely on what I've said, because I've said it before. I'm not budging. I'm meeting the moment, but I'm not adapting, trying to fit myself into the moment. That seems to be working for him.
And it worked for Bernie Sanders in 2016. He won Michigan in that primary for
against Hillary Clinton.
Against Hillary Clinton, and seeing a lot of those themes. And I'm also thinking a lot about 2016 in the frame of Republicans. I talked to so many Republicans in 2016 who really hated the Republican Party. Again, kind of the same ideas of you're telling us who's electable and it hasn't worked. So that was a fuel for Donald Trump. You've outlined this whole idea of how we can win, and that hasn't worked, and they went with Trump. That I think we're seeing a lot of that play out in Democratic primaries as well.
I want to turn now to Terry Sullivan and Chuck Rocha. Terry is a CBS News political contributor, former campaign manager for Marco Rubio in 2016 when he ran for president. Chuck, CBS News political analyst. So, Chuck, let me start with you because there's lots for you to look at tonight in the early data. What are you seeing?
Well, one thing I want to make sure that everybody's clear about what's going to happen in November. And Democrats must have this seat in November if there's any chance of us to win back the House and to win back the Senate. And this is a Senate race. And the one thing I want you to focus on is two things that I promise you are going to happen. As a Democrat, I'm going to say every Republican is Donald Trump, and they're responsible for Donald Trump. And every Republican that I know, and smart Republican strategist, is going to say, we're all a bunch of New York Democratic socialists, just like the DSA in New York. What's different with El-Sayed, and what I've been looking at, is at his rallies. The first thing he says to people is, money out of politics, money in your pocket. It's the first thing he says. The second thing he says is, everybody deserves to have health care. Let's have Medicare for all. Let's drain the swamp. Let's end foreign wars. A lot of the things that he's saying are the exact things that Donald Trump ran on when he ran Michigan. I think there's a lot of folks who are underestimating the appeal across the aisle with El-Sayed.
Chuck, I want to ask you about something. This thought occurred to me last night. It's not a well-formed thought. It may be a ludicrous thought, but I want to run it by you. Because El-Sayed has worked very hard on repeating, like you said, almost mantra-like Medicare for all. And other progressives have as well. I wonder if in this election cycle, Medicare for all is the 2016 equivalent of build the wall, meaning it drives to an important issue, it oversimplifies it, but it drives to something that has tremendous grassroots appeal. Like I said, it's a not dramatically well-formed thought, but I want to run it by you.
The thing that it taps into is the same thing that Donald Trump tapped in with the wall, which was a frustration. People were frustrated with the border, just like people are frustrated with costs now. And a big part of your cost is not only gas at $4 a gallon, but it's the price of your health care. Like, everybody has to pay for their health care, and everybody will complain that they're not in love with their health care company and that they pay too much for it. So it's tapping into that anxiety, and I think that's why that simplistic message does work.
Terry, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with Chuck on a lot of what he's saying here, except for the Medicare part. Look, Medicare for all, hello, I'm with the government and I'm here to help you. Like, yes, healthcare is broken in America, but the government fixing it is not the solution. And I don't think American voters believe that right now. I believe Chuck is exactly right that there's this very anti-establishment, anti-Washington approach to things. But it's not, hey, we just need more of them to fix our healthcare system. Because the only thing more screwed up than the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies is the government of the United States. And so they're not the fix here. And so there is an anti-establishment approach here. It's strong. It's much like in 2010 where Republicans were at with the Tea Party movement. And that's where I think there's a connection here, is that Republicans in 2010 took over. I was part of a lot of Republicans beating incumbents in primaries for the first time in decades, and be able to do that in 2010, and then some of them turning around and losing the general election because they outkicked their coverage a little bit. And I think that might be where Democrats are here, where you're going to get a lot of energy in these primaries. You're going to get candidates that are further to the left, and then they're going to turn around and lose a general election.
Terry, I want to ask you about El-Sayed, because one of the things said about him, even by those who don't agree with him but admire his sort of moxie and modern-day political skills, very good on social media, very good in the podcast space. There are older, more establishment political strategists of both parties who kind of look down at that. But he's saying, no, that is where the grass is greener. That's where the younger voters can be found, and that's where you can create a little bit of campaign grassroots magic. What do you think of that?
Yeah, he's not wrong. Look, authenticity is king, and it has been for a while. And if you are, look, we're seeing this in this race. I mean, Stevens, on her side has outspent him anywhere from 8 to 10 to 1. That is insane an amount of money. And he's still going to beat her tonight by a significant margin, if not double digits. And that's what I believe in my prediction. But like, the reality is because he's coming across as authentic. He seems legitimate. He's not playing the game to the pollsters or trying to placate certain different demographic groups. He's just speaking his mind, and it's not dissimilar than how Donald Trump won in 2016.
Terry Sullivan's laid down a prediction. Quick reminder, Anthony Salvanto just has this as a lean El-Sayed race at the moment. Ahead, we'll look at the state of the economy in Michigan and its larger impact on the midterms. That's next. You're watching CBS News, America Decides, Campaign 2026. We'll be right back, I promise.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nora O'Donnell, and I want to tell you about my new podcast, Healthful. Every week, I bring you the latest science, Dr. Brem, myth-busting, and trusted medical expertise.
Perimenopause is hormonal chaos. We have biology to help you not suffer.
To help you improve your health, your happiness. This is like such an aha moment, and just to improve your life. I think talking about this is so incredibly important. Healthful, a new CBS News podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
One of the best compliments we can ever get comes from you, the viewer, where people say, you know what? I always learn something when I watch your show. It's today's eye-opener. It's your world in 90 seconds.
We want you to walk out the house fully equipped.
How to keep your skin plump, young.
Juicy, Nora.
Juicy.
Join us, because we think what, Nate?
There's no better way to start your day.
What he said.
Go to the ends of the earth, half a world away, and reach for the stars.
If I take time to think, they might go get Brad.
Experience thought-provoking,
Something that speaks to people across time.
innovative,
It's this magical process.
and truly original reporting.
You've discovered you're more of a songwriter. Where does that leave you?
Great question.
Because there's always something new under the sun.
There's a lot more on the menu.
On CBS Sunday morning.
Why doesn't he tell Republicans, come into my office, let's hammer this thing out?
Margaret, it's a totally fair question.
Politics isn't a game. Why are you opposed to this deployment?
It's unconstitutional.
Politics is about policy. I'm a voracious consumer of information, and I'm impatient. I don't like to be spun. To be moderator of Face the Nation means bringing the most powerful stakeholders to the table to become better informed.
I'm Tony DeCopel. The CBS Evening News is the story of America one day at a time.
I'm Tony.
While we cover a lot of ground, we also stick to the basics. What's real?
Do you ever get scared?
Yeah. And what's important.
I'm just asking you why you're here and what your message is.
Success for us is not how much we pack into a show, but how much you take away from it. And we'll always end with the good stuff, something to remind you that there's a lot of life out there beyond the headlines. So join me. This is the CBS Evening News.
New information coming into CBS News 24/7.
Airline pilots like we never saw the helicopter.
Clash between federal agents and
The
protesters.
suspect waited for quite some time.
What the court did was really spend a lot of time looking at the Constitution.
This Marshall's team was designed to be the last line of defense in the region.
Saddle up, cowboy.
Try to keep up.
Welcome back. You are watching America Decides Campaign 2026, and we very much appreciate you doing that. We're keeping a close eye on Michigan's Democratic primary for the Senate. So let's check back into that race. As you can see, Abdul El-Sayed, just under 53%. Haley Stevens, just over 44%. We'll have more with Anthony Salvanto on that in a moment. Other big races in Michigan. Jocelyn Benson, the current Secretary of State, declared the winner in the Democratic primary. That race became infinitely easier for Jocelyn Benson when Mike Duggan, former mayor of Detroit, running as an independent, dropped out. Also, Michigan Republican governor primary seat, John James, well ahead of Perry Johnson. We do not have a call on that race yet, but those are the results as they stand. CBS News Elections and Surveys Director Anthony Salvanto joins us, and he wants to introduce, and I'm glad he is, a special guest. Who is it?
Yeah, Major, this is Zachary Danini from VoteHub. He's head of data science there, and we are really excited because VoteHub is going to be working with us for this election cycle, including helping us analyze and make some really cool maps, which, of course, everybody likes to see. The map Zachary and I are going to show you tells another story beyond Wayne County, because there's a whole lot of others. And part of this goes to what we're talking about, white working class voters and young voters. I'm going to rewind the clock really quickly here. Back, yes, 10 years, but still applicable. When Bernie Sanders beat Hillary Clinton in Michigan in 2016, how did he do it? Well, he conceded these counties, including around Detroit, which were longer-term Democrats. But he won every place else. And that was one of the signals that he had perhaps a new constituency that Democrats needed to have. So I'm going to dive in here, and Zach's going to help me out with, let's start with Washtenaw. Okay, this is Ann Arbor. Go for it.
Yeah, so this is where the University of Michigan is. So we talk about El-Sayed doing well with young voters, with progressive voters. This is his base. And so far, he's up by 37. So it's a big number.
And I can, with the help of VoteHub, we can actually zoom in here and actually do the precincts in Ann Arbor, the individual townships around. And when we talk about dominating the vote, you see like every precinct here.
Every precinct is purple.
Is going that way. So in other words, a candidate hitting their marks, a candidate hitting what they have to do. So now I'm going to go back to the other map, and let's talk about Oakland. Let's talk about Oakland. This is a suburb of the suburbs of Detroit. This is Haley Stevens' territory, right?
Yep, this is her home county. This is where her U.S. House district is she currently represents. So she's up by 2 now, which is a lot less than 37. I will say there's some absentee vote outstanding, which Stevens is actually winning by 35 in this county. So we think she'll get that up, but she's not winning by 37 in her home territory.
And then the final piece of this we want to show you is Grand Rapids. Not a ton in there, but it's going to be important because out in Grand Rapids, we would expect El-Sayed maybe to hit better marks or hit his marks there, right?
Mm-hmm. So this is absentee vote in Grand Rapids. So we think El-Sayed will grow on his margin from here. This is just Grand Rapids City. It looks like he could win it by 20, 30, maybe even 40 points. Again, this is a candidate hitting his mark in his territory.
That's that VoteHub insight, which we appreciate. Back to you, Major.
And Anthony and Zach, very quickly. So what I can take away from what I just heard you say, Haley Stevens doing okay where she needs to do okay, but Abdul El-Sayed doing really well where he's expected to do really well. So momentum-wise, early days, early hours, the momentum was with El-Sayed.
Yes, and the little coda to that is because so much of this is early, is absentee vote, that was the place that I think Stevens and her campaign probably expected to do a little bit better. So that's her maybe not quite hitting her marks every place else.
Zach, welcome aboard. Great to have you with us. Anthony and Zach, we'll be back to you in just a little bit. With us now, CBS News Saturday morning anchor and Money Watch correspondent, Kelly O'Grady. She has a closer look at the economic situation in Michigan. And let's start with the word everyone speaks, affordability, which is a placeholder for inflation, which is a placeholder for day-to-day, week-to-week, can you pay your bills?
No, that's exactly right, Major. And I want to look at that from the 30,000-foot view with Michigan and then dive into the details. So Michigan's economy for the working class person, it is best described as a tight squeeze. You've got growth that's thin, and then you've got costs for households rising at a rate faster than many feel their opportunities are. And perception is everything when those folks are going to the ballot box. And Michigan is really important because it is a microcosm for what's going on at the national level. I'll share a CBS News analysis with you. Very simple math. Since 2019, the raw paycheck for the average American has grown 37%, but inflation has gobbled up 85% of those gains. So that's where that big bad word affordability comes in. Now, digging into the details, there are 4 areas in Michigan where this really rings true. Prices in Detroit are up 4%. That's above the national average. Food, though, up 6%. Energy up 20%. It is no wonder that voters are concerned about their groceries, their gas, the utility bills, instead of those broader economic statistics. Jobs, Major, is another one. The unemployment rate is 5%. That's also above the national average. But growth is the bigger issue. I was actually looking at Michigan's payroll earlier today, and it's pretty much flat versus the last year. They only added 1,000 new roles. But the bigger so what for me was the manufacturing industry. It actually lost 7,000 jobs in the past year. Michigan, of all places, right? Heart of manufacturing, the auto industry. So really, this isn't just about the employment picture. It's about whether Michigan can produce well-paying, stable jobs as tariffs really remake the landscape. Then you add on the third point, housing, and that complicates the picture. Michigan estimates that working class households, there is 119,000 shortage of homes. That's why you see a lot of candidates this primary race really trying to address that. And now let's put the cherry on top of the Sunday Major. If you're still with me, data centers. Who is paying for this increase in electricity? Is it the tech companies? Is it the voter? It's promised jobs in construction. And so you really put all of this together. And what I am seeing is the heart of the economic question across all of these pieces is who benefits from the growth and who is really going to pay for it, Major.
Kelly, you said autos and you said manufacturing. Manufacturing jobs down a net 7,000. Michigan, like every state, has a multivariate economy. There's agriculture, there's tourism, but manufacturing and autos are a big part of it. And tariffs have been a large part of the Trump agenda. And it's not just making vehicles, it's parts and those who make them. And Canada, right across from Michigan, that's got to be a part of this story.
It absolutely is. And remember, as we are talking about this, the renegotiation of that very important trade agreement between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada is going on. And the auto industry is at the heart of it. So I think a lot of voters, they heard in Michigan how tariffs were going to help their industry. They were going to bring manufacturing jobs back. They also heard from the auto companies themselves how this was going to be really difficult for the supply chain. Because to your point, you get parts, you get aluminum, you get steel from places outside of the United States. And we haven't really had enough time to see how this all comes together. And yet you are going to have those squeezed voters going to the ballot box and making a judgment call on whether the tariff promises are working.
Kelly O'Grady, great stuff as always. I appreciate it very much. I want to bring back Terry Sullivan and Chuck Rocha. Chuck, your thoughts?
You know, I like what was just said because I think it's indicative of Michigan. Michigan is one of the last bastions of American manufacturing. Everybody can remember this great auto industry, the great steel industry. You know, Major, I was the political director of the steelworkers for 13 years. And before that, I worked in a factory in East Texas that had 1,400 men and women working in my factory that shut down because of NAFTA and moved overseas. That story's been told all across Michigan, and it resonates with people when they're very anxious and feeling that things are going up and nobody's listening to them. Their government, they're elected. That's why I think it's really a change elections. Donald Trump, as a Democrat, I give him credit because he tapped into that anxiety, and I think that's what El-Sayed's doing tonight.
Terry, on that point of the president in 2016 and again in 2024, tapping into anxieties, offering remedies, on manufacturing writ large, that's still an incomplete story for this administration. Lots of rhetoric, but not the jobs on the board that they were hoping to see by this time.
Yeah, look, this is going to be a situation where Mike Rogers has to run his own campaign, and it has to be separate from what the administration has done or has not done in this situation. And it's got to be a choice between the two candidates. And I think if Mike Rogers places this as a choice between he and El-Sayed, then he can win this thing and has a real good shot of winning this thing. I think if it becomes a referendum on the presidency because of the trade issues, because of some of that other stuff, it becomes tougher for Rogers to do. But I do think this is a very winnable. And look, let's remember that at the end of the day, this is a Democrat seat that we're talking about in this election environment about a Republican picking up and having a good shot. That is a huge gain for Republicans. We control the Senate by 3 seats, 53 seats in the Senate right now. So this is the fact that this is in play is a huge problem for Democrats. They need to take this and then go pick off another 3 Republican Senate seats. So Republicans are in a good place in Michigan in this race.
And Terry, before we go to break, I just want to bore in on something you said, because I think it's going to be important if Republicans are going to be successful this difficult midterm election cycle to define the race as much as they can on their terms, their comparative candidate-to-candidate terms, and try to figure out a way, and it won't be easy, to stay out of the Trump shadow.
Yeah, well, that's every single election, off-cycle election since the beginning of time. A president in his midterms, his first midterms, never does well for his party. And so the party has to put some distance there. And the question is, will Donald Trump allow that distance? That's an important thing. But it's what President Obama lost seats in his midterm elections. And so no matter how popular you are, it's an issue. And so the fact that Republicans are putting a Democrat seat in play is a huge deal.
Terry Sullivan, appreciate it very much. Chuck Rocher, we'll be back to you, I promise you. Coming up, we will check back in with the king. Wow, the king. I didn't know. Wow, I thought he was like the sort of prince of maps, but the king of maps, Anthony Salvato. And Zach, our new guy, Zach. You just met him. You're watching CBS News, America Decides, Campaign 2026. Stay with us.
Sunday morning, Lauren Hutton's Lucky Life. We'll dig into worm grunting and hear new music from Corinne Bailey Ray. Listen for the trumpet.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nora O'Donnell, and I want to tell you about my new podcast, Healthful. Every week, I bring you the latest science, Dr. Brem, myth-busting, and trusted medical expertise.
Perimenopause is hormonal chaos. We have biology to help you not suffer.
To help you improve your health, your happiness. This is like such an aha moment, and just to improve your life. I think talking about this is so incredibly important. Healthful, a new CBS News podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Eric Richins was found dead in his home.
The family had been alerted by Eric that if something happened to him, to look at Corey.
Why would Corey Richins want her husband dead? What jurors on the case say led to their verdict?
I was like, seriously? Now we've seen just about everything in this trial.
48 Hours, now streaming on CBS and Paramount Plus.
Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
I'm Tony DeCopel. The CBS Evening News is the story of America one day at a time. I'm Tony. There are big questions that all of us are asking. I want to get you the answers. So join me. This is the CBS Evening News.
Chilling with the queen. Her name is Gayle King.
Hey!
CBS Morning.
See you at 7.
CBS Morning.
CBS Morning.
What she said.
I'm Major Garrett in Washington, inviting you to the Takeout. Politics, policy, people, and pop culture served up weeknights. What's on the menu? Plenty. The day's happenings with curiosity, informality, and humor. It's serious discussion, but we do not take ourselves too seriously. Who is a better speaker, Mike Johnson or you?
Oh, come on.
Join me on the Takeout. Streaming right here on CBS News 24/7.
I'm Adriana Diaz.
And I'm Kelly O'Grady.
Join us right here
for the perfect start to your weekend.
Watch CBS Saturday morning
on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nora O'Donnell, and this is Healthful. Every week, I bring you the latest science and trusted medical expertise to help you improve your health, your happiness, and just to improve your life. Healthful, a new CBS News podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back. You're watching America Decides Campaign 2026. Thanks so much for being with us. I'm Major Garrett. Michigan Democratic Representative Debbie Dingell joins us now. Congresswoman, always good to see you. You know Michigan voters very, very well. We have no calls to make, as you know, but we have trajectories, both in the Senate Democratic primary and in Democratic primaries in the 7th Congressional District and the 13th District, where progressives in all three places seem to be doing well. What does that mean to you?
So, first of all, I hate labels, Major. It's good to see you after what's been a long day and is going to be a long night. And I think each of those races that you're talking about can be analyzed from a different perspective. When you talk about the Senate seat, first of all, we are waiting for a lot of numbers in the metro Detroit area. So we got to be careful. The only poll that matters is the poll on election night, and we've got to see those numbers. And I think they both ran very strong campaigns. Everybody has been saying that Abdul was going to win. I think we got to wait and see what happens tonight. The Detroit vote will matter, and it's always one of the last in. On the other two, I think they're very different circumstances. I think you're talking the Detroit seat, the other Detroit seat, and I think there are a lot of very complicating factors in that, including how members are perceived, casework, known for delivering for people, and that a label doesn't work in that seat the way that you want it to. It's really based on people's works and performance and what you see. And in the 7th district, you had a three-way race. You had three strong candidates. But the candidate that's lived in that district the longest is the candidate that's ahead right now. He has been very involved and engaged in the district for years and is better known. So I think you got to be careful at overanalyzing the way that everybody wants to do and pitting people against each other.
You know as well as I do, Congresswoman, probably much better that tomorrow, whatever the results in the statewide race, the Senate campaign, the imperative for Michigan Democrats will be to find a path as soon as possible to unity. Do you think that's going to be possible?
It's got to be possible. I've been working it all day. And you know me, I stayed neutral in these races because I know the importance of pulling together. And people have been trying to pit us against each other all day. How can you go with someone? I think you're going to find that there's far more in common in all of these races than there are differences, and everybody knows what's at stake in November. And that when you talk about the issues that matter, that when you talk about, it was an excellent economic analysis, by the way, of the state of Michigan right now. And people are hurting. And when you talk about groceries and gas and home buying and talk about a broken healthcare system, you tell me who's going to fight for the working people of this state, fight for those jobs, not going to be afraid to stand up and say, hey, tariffs are a tool in the toolbox, but chaotic tariffs are hurting our jobs here in Michigan. And I think people know what's at stake in November, but we got our work cut out and we got to do it in these next few days.
Congresswoman, it's Caitlin Huey-Burns. Good to see you. I want to pick up on that point about working voters in Michigan, because back in 2016, you were critical in your assessments of the party and their failures in your home state in that election. I'm wondering if you see any similar themes between then and now within your party, and any lessons learned that you think should be applied here in this go-round.
So I continue to say, by the way, it's not just a problem in my state. It's a problem for Democrats, period. We are still not getting those union halls back. And we need to go in and listen to those working men and women and hear what they're worried about and the issues that they want to see us talk about. And they're the issues that you just talked about when you talk about what's the economy of Michigan like right now. Too many of them have seen their jobs shipped overseas. They want to have job stability. They want to see those manufacturing jobs brought back to this country. They want to see trade policies. They want to see people care about them in the issues that matter to them every single day, like how much groceries cost, how much it costs to commute to work when you've got the price of gasoline this high, how they can't afford to buy a house anymore, especially young people. And we all have to do, you know, if you go look at the op-ed I did in the Washington Post the day after that election, you'll find it's got a lot of things that are very common to what we're talking about right now.
Congresswoman, before we let you go, you mentioned Wayne County, Metro Detroit. As I mentioned earlier, some of the analysis I've seen before this, about 30% of tonight's turnout could be African-American voters in Michigan, concentrated in Wayne County, Metro Detroit. That's why you're identifying this as an important place to keep an eye on and hold all of your powder about projections until those come in?
I think I do, by the way. You've seen the numbers. People were calling me and saying that this race was over an hour ago, and you've seen those numbers tighten. I think this race is going to be tighter than people think. And, you know, I've got a really good political gut, as you know, Major. I, in 2016, said months out, Hillary's going to lose. I knew Kamala had lost. I just, you know, my gut sees what some of these polls are saying. I think this race is tight. And let's see what the night brings. But then we got to all pull together, and that is very important.
Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it very much. Caitlin, thoughts?
You know, it is very interesting because she was kind of the canary in the coal mine in 2016.
I remember being at the Detroit Economic Club covering then candidate Trump, and she pulled me aside and she rolled her eyes and she said, all this Hillary stuff, it's in the bag. Don't believe it. There are real troubles here. I'm not saying Trump's going to win, but I'm saying there are troubles in Michigan. She pulled me aside in the summer of 2016. She was right.
She was right. And it's been 10 years now, and these issues are the same. It's amazing that. And this is, again, why voters are so angry, because they've been talking about this for the better part of a decade, and they're not feeling like anything has been done about it. These issues of affordability wasn't called affordability back then, but it's the same kind of thing. People are getting ahead, and I'm falling behind. You're seeing that theme over and over again. And I'm curious, though, I wanted to ask her if she does think that El-Sayed could win in a general election, because that is also going to be the test in terms of Democrats uniting around him, and not all of them have said that they will.
No, they haven't.
Earlier today, I asked Chuck Schumer, who's the Senate leader, wants to be the majority leader, if he will endorse El-Sayed if he wins, and he wouldn't answer, but said, we're going to win in Michigan. And that's kind of the refrain that they've been saying over and over again. But there is this concern about whether he can. His argument is, if you're speaking to voters, they'll show up and be enthusiastic to show up. It's an open question.
El-Sayed told our Ed O'Keefe yesterday in his interview, electability is the proof on election day.
Yeah.
And if I'm outspent 7, 8, 10 to 1 and I still win, by definition, that means I'm electable because I can withstand a lot of outside spending, which is what I'm going to face if I'm the nominee against Mike Rogers. Anthony Salvanto back in the broadcast center in New York. Must be where all the cool kids are hanging out because yet another special guest has arrived. Anthony, take it away.
Yeah, because at the data desk here, I have the pleasure of being surrounded by some very smart people. This is J. Miles Coleman, who's the associate editor of Crystal Ball. So when folks talk about handicapping house races, nobody better in the business. My friend Kyle is down there with you. You'll see him in a minute. But let me just show you very quickly, because we've been talking about this as we were listening to your interview, and I wanted to pull this up. Right now, Democrats don't think as much of their party's economic policy as Republicans think of theirs. What does that mean as we watch tonight unfold? It means that these candidates are trying to make the case in their primary that they can direct the party in a way that they think meets those economic needs. That's part of the argument here. Now, where does that play out in the House? Miles, I'm going to toss this over to you, but we're going to tell them very simply. Michigan matters because it's got a few House races that are up for grabs, and there aren't many toss-ups this year. Why is that?
Yeah, so there are a couple of reasons. You know, one of the weird things about this election is we have a lot of mid-decade redistricting. So that's not usually done at this time. The effect of that is that's taken some of those toss-up races, moved them to one side or the other. The other thing is, to make a quick comparison, you know, when Democrats were in this position in 2018, trying to win back the House in a Trump midterm, they had something like 24 Republicans who were in districts that Hillary Clinton won in 2016. This time there's only 2 or 3. So, you know, those would be like the logical kind of toss-up.
They don't have the cross-partisan advantage.
Not as much of that anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just a great point, because I'm going to move over here and I'm going to show you these are where that smattering of competitive districts are. And I'll just go ahead and circle there. There's 4 in Michigan, and that's pretty high for a state. There aren't many states that have that many, right?
That's right.
So that's why Michigan matters, and again, why the economy then impacts how those districts could potentially swing, Major.
Anthony, before I let you go, our characterization of the Senate Democratic primary still lean El-Sayed. We heard Debbie Dingell, the Congresswoman, say her gut is this is going to tighten up. Her gut is good. Her gut's something she relies on politically. But what's the data telling us and the trend lines in the last half hour or so?
That is true. It has tightened since we last spoke. El-Sayed now at 51 to 45 for Stevens. That is tighter than the last time you and I talked. Yes, it is still leaning his way. And you can see on the map, though, the reason that has tightened, and that is the vote reports that we are getting. Initially, we thought, OK, he was on a trajectory to do better. But there's a lot of these yellow-colored counties in here where Stevens so far is hitting her marks. That's a tighter race.
Anthony Salvanto and Miles, we appreciate it. Senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe with the Abdul El-Sayed campaign in Detroit. Ed.
You know, I just want to go back to the conversation with the congresswoman for a moment. I think we have to remind viewers who are not as familiar with Michigan or Detroit area politics. Her husband, of course, was John Dingell, the longest-serving congressman in American history. His father also served from the 1930s to the 1950s. And she reminded me of something yesterday when we had breakfast. She said, you know, in some parts of the country, the idea of Medicare for all is going to be seen as extreme or way too liberal. But I want to remind people the Dingells were among those that pushed for the passage of Social Security, and we consistently won elections in this area. And John Dingell, her husband, would introduce legislation to pass Medicare for all, and she supports it virtually every session. So she said, am I a socialist? Am I an extremist liberal Democrat? Most wouldn't necessarily characterize me that way, but there is a strain of Michigan Democratic politics that has always agreed with that concept of trying to pass something like Medicare for all, and we won elections. And maybe he can do that, she suggested, by continuing to push for that big, bold idea that, as you were talking about earlier, Major, is sort of seen as a litmus test or a rallying cry for the left this year. This campaign believes that we will get more clarity in these results sometime after 10 p.m. Eastern, about 11 minutes from now, as results continue to come in. But it was Dingell and Anthony and others who have said you have to watch later into the night as the results continue to come in here in Detroit and in the suburban counties around it, because Stevens may very well have enough there to at least keep this close. So that is part of what is the holdup here, and everyone anticipated a longer night. As for what's going on here, this is one of those great legendary downtown theaters that once was one thing and now is one of those standing room only music clubs. And it's the kind of place that hosts primary night rallies all across the country. We saw that in Brooklyn last year. We've seen it in other parts of the country. What you have here are a few hundred of his support, only a few hundred of his supporters, and a handful of the kind of micro and macro liberal digital influencers that are helping fuel campaigns like El-Sayed's. Hassan Piker is here. There are other guys with other organizations called The Coup, live streaming from the floor, doing what we're doing to much smaller and far more ideologically aligned audiences. That is the kind of organizing that is now being done with these successful Democratic campaigns. On your phone, streaming live to maybe just a few hundred people. And one of the things that Hassan Piker, for all the controversy that he creates in his statements and in things he has done and said about the Democratic Party, that we started to see in recent days in a handful of the primaries here, and some we'll see next week in Wisconsin, is he's now hosting live streams where he's telling those that are watching, by the way, go donate to this candidate while you're watching me talk to him. And these candidates are starting to raise 4 or 5 figure sums in just a few minutes from his followers. That's the kind of sort of digital outreach and fundraising and organizing that you're going to see a lot more of as we go into the fall and as we get ready for the presidential contest in 2028.
On the scene, live streaming, fundraising, and activating. All of it a part of the new matrix of American politics, just summarized by Ed O'Keefe. Ed, thank you very much. You are watching CBS News America Decides Campaign 2026. I have a promise. We'll be right back.
Vic. 33 years old, naval intelligence officer.
Looks like there's a story there.
Oh, wow. That's really nice silk.
How about I just give you guys highlights?
Everyone
robbery and the murder are connected. Genius, McGee.
Elite. Very elite.
NCIS is all new CBS Tuesday, 8/7 Central, and streaming on Paramount+.
We don't want to accept that there's evil that walks amongst us, but it does.
You know how when you meet somebody, you can't put your finger on it, but something's not right?
You never know what anybody is capable of.
I am a serial killer who's only killed once.
Did you think when this goes public, this town's gonna be shocked?
Absolutely.
When you're dealing with a 30-year-old cold case, it seems like there's not a lot of hope.
We knew there was a monster out there, and we were going to find him and get him.
Look at him just coming around the corner like that.
We started tracking the area.
When did this accident scene become a crime scene?
Police! You called him a lying liar who lies about lying.
Do you know why we're stopping you today?
What makes you so sure that you stabbed your sister while you were sleepwalking?
I never got a chance to see her one last time.
Such injustice. I can't believe they did this to her.
But no matter how hard it gets, never give up.
I'm Natalie Morales with 48 Hours. Did you have anything to do with Joanna Hunter's death?
This is a family that just wants justice.
I'm Tony DeCopel. The CBS Evening News is the story of America one day at a time. I'm Tony. There are big questions that all of us are asking. I want to get you the answers. So join me. This is the CBS Evening News.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nora O'Donnell, and this is Healthful. Every week, I bring you the latest science and trusted medical expertise to help you improve your health, your happiness, and just to improve your life. Healthful, a new CBS News podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
It's a good time. One of the best compliments we can ever get comes from you, the viewer, where people say, you know what? I always learn something when I watch your show. It's today's eye-opener. It's your world in 90 seconds.
We want you to walk out the house fully equipped.
How to keep your skin plump, young,
Juicy, Nora.
juicy.
Join us, because we think what, Nate?
There's no better way to start your day.
What he said.
Welcome back. Make no mistake, there are cool kids here at the desk in D.C. One of them is Kyle Kondik. He's managing editor of Sabato's Crystal Ball and a member of our data desk team. Kyle, what are you seeing tonight?
It looks like the Michigan Senate primary is not quite over with yet. You know, Abdul El-Sayed was a big favorite going in tonight. Seems like things have gotten a little tighter. Stay tuned, I think. And Michigan just takes forever to count its votes, too. So we may be at this for a while.
Not to suggest there's anything wrong. They just have a process.
That's
in Wayne
exactly
County,
right.
Detroit.
Exactly.
That is, that goes through a process.
Right.
It's visible. It's live streamed. Everyone can watch it, but it takes a while.
That's right. Yeah, I wasn't saying there's anything wrong with the vote count. It's just that, it can just takes a long time. Yes,
people jump to conclusions. And to your point, there was one poll out of 4 that showed Haley Stevens ahead of Abdul El-Sayed, 3 showing him ahead. And all 3 of the ones had him ahead were 8 to double digits, 8 points or double digits. So this looks a bit tighter than the punditocracy was expecting or projecting.
Yeah, I think that's right. Although, you got to remember, there also are lots of differences between, what kinds of votes are being counted at what times. Is it in person? Is it mail-in votes? Is Stevens is doing better in? It might be sort of vary by county. So there's just a lot to sort of sift through. But we also have to remember we can't make judgments until everything is in.
Right. What else are you seeing tonight that's of interest to you?
We're talking about sort of progressive strength in the Democratic Party. A sort of a win for the establishment came in Missouri. Wesley Bell in the 1st Congressional District defeated Cori Bush.
Handily defeated
Cori
Bush. And who had that seat, lost it to Wesley Bell. This is a rematch.
Yeah, and that is a super safe Democratic seat, but that's an interesting result. Another one to watch in Michigan is Michigan's 7th Congressional District around Lansing. That used to be now Senator Lisa Slotkin's House seat. Now it's Republican Tom Barrett. A progressive William Lawrence is leading there. There's sort of an establishment split between 2 other candidates, but that one's been getting a little bit closer as time has gone on, too, so we'll see what happens with that one.
Excellent. I want to go back to Anthony Salvanto in our broadcast center in New York. If he is available. Anthony, are you there?
Kyle,
You're
mentioned
always there.
Did somebody say Michigan 7? That is your up to the second vote. Kyle, you are right. That's gotten a little bit tighter, but that is one to keep an eye on. And it's one both you and I think, obviously, that's a potential toss-up going into November, right? Now,
Anthony, let me just jump in. The numbers there make it clear if there were not a split of the so-called establishment/moderate candidates, the progressive would not be ahead.
Yes. And in any multi-candidate race, you're going to see some of that phenomena. But yes, that is correct. And you see, here Mazdam does not lead in any particular county, but that's a solid, almost 31% right now. So that one, I suspect that's going to be another couple hours before we know it. But again, the point of, there's maybe 4 seats in Michigan that come November, we're going to be sitting here talking about, and this is going to be one of them. So that's a stay tuned moment right there.
Anthony, back to the Senate race.
Yeah.
What are our newest numbers and what is our current characterization?
So current characterization remains as it is. El-Sayed does have the lead here. It has gotten tighter over the course of the night. There's a reason for that, and that is, you might remember right at the top, I showed you that I was going to be comparing and watching the 2016 vote. Yes, it's 10 years ago, but it's that Bernie Sanders vote where he did well throughout the state. So far, what we don't see is El-Sayed doing as well throughout the state. In fact, Stevens doing better, El-Sayed underperforming that Sanders vote. That's the story. So now, for now.
Current characterization, lean Abdul El-Sayed in that Democratic Senate primary. When we have a projection in that Michigan Democratic Senate primary, we will bring it to you right here on CBS News 24/7. I want to thank you for joining us. Thanks to all of our correspondents and colleagues. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.
Sunday morning, Lauren Hutton's Lucky Life. We'll dig into worm grunting and hear new music from Corinne Bailey Ray. Listen for the trumpet.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nora O'Donnell, and I want to tell you about my new podcast, Healthful. Every week, I bring you the latest science, Dr. Brem, myth-busting, and trusted medical expertise.
Perimenopause is hormonal chaos. We have biology to help you not suffer.
To help you improve your health, your happiness. This is like such an aha moment, and just to improve your life. I think talking about this is so incredibly important. Healthful, a new CBS News podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Eric Richins was found dead in his home.
The family had been alerted by Eric that if something happened to him, to look at Corey.
Why would Corey Richins want her husband dead? What jurors on the case say led to their verdict.
I was like, seriously? Now we've seen just about everything in this trial.
48 Hours, now streaming on CBS and Paramount Plus.
Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
I'm Tony DeCopel. The CBS Evening News is the story of America one day at a time. I'm Tony. There are big questions that all of us are asking. I want to get you the answers. So join me. This is the CBS Evening News.
Chilling with the queen. Her name is Gayle King. Hey! CBS.
CBS Morning.
See you at 7.
CBS.